So I wanted to do a video on some of the comments that I had on the previous video where I talked about how we're just about to get our vehicle to grid installed, because I think some of these are really good. So let's get into it. So I just wanted to look at some of these comments that I've had on the video that I just did around my vehicle to grid being installed. It has been installed now, but let's save that for a future video. It's already done. But some of these comments are, I think, one of the reasons why I think it's great to do and document what's going on here, because some of this stuff has made me think, and it's hopefully also stuff that might make the folks involved in the trial think as well about what people are thinking out there, and it's great, it's nice. So the first comment, this one's from Michael. Hey Michael. He says, looking forward to seeing the results of this trial. The following is a little rant, which I hope you'll forgive. I don't think it's a rant, to be honest, Michael. I think this is just some comment. It's a shame that it's a shame that the term grid is used on this scheme, because, as you said, overall power networks is somewhat like a tree. And I think what he's getting at there is it's not really a grid like a meshed grid. It's more tributary-like in its shape, rather than some kind of fully meshed system. I can see that microgeneration injection power, providing power to the local LV distribution network, so low voltage distribution network, and at a pinch upwards to the 11 kilovolt network. The impedance is far too high to inject upwards into the actual grid, so the proper grid, where it is meshed, as the actual grid is 275 kilovolts and 132 kilovolts. The levels downwards from the grid to the LV distribution are 66 kilovolts, 33 kilovolts and 11 kilovolts, often known as the sub-transmission network. So he's getting on to the pedantic nature of the term vehicle to grid, essentially saying that the power's never going to make it all the way back to the proper grid, but it might percolate up to some of the lower voltage parts of the distribution network. And okay, fine. I'm not an expert, but it sounds like this guy knows at least more onions than I do. I've been retired a long time, and there could be some fantastic new technology, but I did spend some years modelling and designing large grid control stations. Okay, cool. Nice to have you along, Michael. Keep commenting like this. This is great. I can see why distribution network operators could be worried about the cable capacity of their low voltage level when distribution cables were sized based on an after diversity demand of 7 kilowatts per house. So obviously the G100 unit that we have installed here to limit export is something that they've put in to stop damage to the local network. So he's agreeing that it seems like a fairly sensible thing for them to have done. Great. It looks like the vehicle to home is a winner all the way, especially with battery prices falling. So in this, what he's saying is that the idea of powering your home with a power wall that's also your car is a winner. And this is kind of what made me think, actually, about what did I think I was signing up for versus what am I actually going to get. So in vehicle to grid, I assumed that I'd also get a kind of vehicle to home by default, because obviously to get to the grid the power has to pass through my home. But unlike a Powerwall situation, which the Powerwall will provide energy into the home when it's able to, based on how much energy it can see coming into the home. So a Powerwall would say, okay, you've got a lot of electricity coming into your home right now, I shall start pushing energy into your home to save you from expending money on importing energy from the grid. The vehicle to grid scenario that we have at the moment is going to be one where actually the energy provider decides when the car starts to push power out to the grid. Now, it may be that it will coincide with when we are using power, but obviously it's not going to take into account our consumption as much as, say, something like a Powerwall would do. So that's kind of something that I think was a bit of a disconnect in terms of what I was signing up for. I thought I was going to get something that was far more reactive to the loads going on in my home and also provide energy out to the grid. But I think actually, as the name suggests, actually what I am going to get is something that is going to push out energy to the grid basically when energy prices are high and demand is high. That will most likely include my demand in there as well, so I will get a benefit, but it's not going to be something that's going to be constantly working to keep my house at zero when the car's plugged in, as in sort of, not importing anything from the grid. Okay, so let's carry on. There's a lot of investment going on into long-term battery storage, high voltage power networks, especially in California. Okay. Air-ion batteries are being tested, but are hugely expensive. Okay. The dream is that long-term storage will enable renewables to rely and work fully replace fossil fuels. In the UK, liquid metal batteries have been undergoing some development for the last 10 years, but still not quite viable. We are in for a large increases in electricity prices. Yes, we are. And I would install PV and battery storage in a flash if I didn't live in a wood with massive shading problems. So, okay, so that's pretty much, and clearly nuclear is the answer. I think there's a little bit of sarcasm there, although it will be a big part of the answer. So that last bit, I think, there's some really good stuff in there. Battery storage is coming along, and I think if you're into this kind of stuff, you'll know that there's all kinds of lithium-ion based technologies, whether it's brand new lithium-ion or old vehicle batteries that's been repurposed for static type solutions. There's also very different technologies in terms of flow batteries, so liquid based batteries, because space isn't as much of an issue, but longevity is something that's potentially more of an issue as well. So there's lots of technology going on there. I haven't actually heard too much about air-ion and liquid metal. Unless they mean like molten salt type things. They're the only ones I've really heard of, but yeah, lots of stuff there. The other bit, though, he mentions is electricity prices are in for a large increase, and I definitely know that from work I've done at where I actually work, that we're looking at potentially a 50% increase in energy prices. So yeah, I totally get that energy will be going up. So thanks, Michael. I think there's a lot in there to unpick, but it certainly got my brain going about kind of what did I sign up for versus what am I getting in terms of vehicle to home versus vehicle to grid. And I think the thing there is I just thought I was getting vehicle to home by default, but there is a little bit more sensing that needs to go on. And I think this is the thing that I think that his point about the local network as well, and not overloading the local network. If I think about the way that my energy products work with Zappi and Eddy, sensing how much energy is coming off of my solar system and going into the grid, and then trying to use some of that excess export to go into the battery in my car and into the hot water cylinder. I think you could see a solution coming around where actually they could augment the local transformers with some intelligence, so that they can command the local grid to respond to the local condition. So if they see a lot of demand coming through the transformer, they could ask things within that local area connected to that transformer come up again. But obviously that would be, very much more involved than the trial that we're on now. But actually the technology to do that, whether it's using 3 and 4G, 5G connectivity, or some of these LoRa, WAN, IoT type solutions, there's all sorts of wireless connectivity that could be potentially used to augment and then sense over the top of existing equipment. And whilst there is obviously a cost associated with that, it doesn't mean ripping up the whole transformer and putting a new transformer in. So there could be some really really interesting developments in this in the future, which might make it less dangerous for the DNO, the distribution network operator, to they wouldn't have to put a G100 in my home if they knew that the transformer could kind of look after itself. It could have the intelligence on it to say, whoa, I'm getting too much power now being exported towards me, cool yourselves down. And it sends a message out to the homes to say, right, bring your export down. And similarly, if it's starting to see demand increasing, it could request that coming up. So that could be a thing. It makes it more dynamic rather than working out on forecasts and that kind of stuff. Right, next comment is from William. Glad you eventually got your system installed. Look forward to seeing how it goes. Lots of people looking forward to seeing how it goes, so this is great. I say lots, like for my channel there's like a few tens of comments, like 10 comments or something, or maybe less than 10. But nice to have a little small group of people that are interested. It's ridiculous that you have to have a G100 box installed. Your electricity import connection will probably be rated at 80 amps. Well, there's a 100 amp fuse in the breaker, so I'm not sure that it is, but I kind of agree that it is a bit ridiculous that I have to have a G100 installed, but that's just the kind of the route they've gone down. So they could have solved the problem other ways. This was probably just the most expedient way of solving the problem, and the one that they had in their control. So if the car was more intelligent, and you could have had access to the Nissan software engineers and updated the software on the cars, which is a massive hassle, then you could have done it other ways without needing a G100. But what can you do? They want to do the trial, and the trial's already late because of COVID and everything else. So this is the most expedient way of doing it. But your Dino calculates it as if everyone in the street is exporting 20 kilowatts. Okay, that sounds reasonable. I mean, it sounds reasonable that they would. I don't know whether it's 20 kilowatts, but it would certainly be reasonable that they sized the cables, much like Michael's comment earlier, based on an amount going on. I agree that microgeneration customers with solar panels really want vehicle to home, not vehicle to grid systems. So second comment here. But that would mean that these customers would have near zero bills, so the electricity companies and government do not want this to be easy. Well, maybe. I mean, these are private companies, and actually the distribution network operator isn't the company that's selling you the electricity. The distribution network operator is purely the company looking after the infrastructure. So under the UK privatisation of electricity, it was very much like British Rail. Railtrack did the train tracks, and the train operators did the trains. And you can think of the energy network like that as well. So the UK is split up into a number of DNOs. It's UK Power Networks in this region, which is the sort of southeast, and then you have energy suppliers like Octopus Energy. They don't own any of the infrastructure; they just buy the electricity on the market, and their customers pay for it. So I think that it's probably not that they don't want it to be easy. I think it is just that there is elements of this that aren't easy, but it's also because elements of this involve just so many different parties, and that can be, also parties aren't necessarily dynamic and agile, and they're quite sort of big institutions that have been around for a long while, so it takes them a while to adapt to innovation. But I think the point around vehicle to home versus vehicle to grid is a valid point. A vehicle to home system is potentially going to appeal more because people are a little bit maybe selfish in the sense that they want their home to be sorted. Whereas vehicle to grid sounds like you're benefiting, potentially your car is going to benefit others, which maybe is a turn off for some people. But I think actually if you can do vehicle to home well, and actually vehicle to grid happens in with that, I think people will be okay with that too. But I think that is a distinction, just like two comments that have and it's made me think about that. So again, this is one of the reasons I want to do this video, because I think this is bringing up some good points for people who are working on this trial to learn, and ultimately this is going to save me a load of hassle, because they can just watch these videos or I can watch them back and go, oh yeah, I thought that. Also, I think it's ridiculous that CCS charging does not support vehicle to grid, unlike CHAdeMO, which is being phased out. There is a large number of electric vehicles being bought now which will not be able to participate in vehicle to grid in the future because they have CCS charging. That's absolutely correct. And there are. I'll have to dig the standard out. I did look at the CCS standard a little bit. CHAdeMO's standard is pretty rock solid in terms of this kind of stuff. It's got great comms. It uses CAN bus systems. Yeah, it's really solid standard. CCS, well, it looks like it's won the kind of battle of the standards right here in Europe anyway. So we probably are going to see some vehicle to grid stuff coming in at some point with CCS. I did see that it was in the standard. It was certainly mentioned. I don't know if it's been dropped from the standard. I think for me, it will probably be trials like this that help the standards bodies that define these standards actually decide whether it's something they want to continue to pursue. Because if they see no benefit in something, it's very costly to implement something like this in a standard. But also once it is in the standard, it's then potentially more costly to actually put it in the vehicle, because it requires potentially more electronics and certainly different software. So they're not going to do it just for the heck of it. And then if it's a complete bust, then and people don't want it, then they will not put it in the standard, or it will very quickly disappear from a standard. Especially if it's very expensive to implement in hardware. If it doesn't cost anything to implement in hardware and you could enable it with software, then it would be potentially almost like a no-brainer and a software upgrade. But I think that a lot of cars with CCS probably wouldn't be able to just have a flash software update to then become something that would work in vehicle to grid. I think there would be some hardware changes required, but I'm happy to be corrected on that if anyone knows different. But yeah. Covehurst Bay says, nice. Glad it's finally happening for you. My application was rejected on the basis that our 10 kilowatt peak solar array is too big. Wow. 10 kilowatts of solar. This is first world problems here, Covehurst. The solar PV and vehicle to grid would overload UK power networks. It's a shame, because I really wanted vehicle to grid and solar PV arrays. We were not allowed to install a Powerwall either for the same reason. Computer says no. Well, it's probably a proper person said no, to be fair, if that makes you feel any better. But vehicle to grid is the future. Everyone will have an EV. Yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah, I agree. I hope UK power networks are enabled to upgrade their lines, transformers, to get a solution out ASAP. And this is the thing. Yeah, okay, so this is great. I mean, this is great. Obviously another supporter of it, but clearly not able to participate in this trial. And I think it might be just the case that you might just have to wait for a trial that's more nuanced, that's actually maybe there'll be a trial after this trial where actually they'll be able to say we can nuance the vehicle to grid capability more. It's not so binary, and you'll then be able to take part in it. So I think that would be, what I'll be hoping for, is that this is just like the first of a series of trials, and if they go well, and if the solutions, the technologies develop, then you might be able to engage in future trials, because I don't think this will be the last. But wow, 10 kilowatts of solar, that's an impressive setup. So yeah, hopefully. And again, maybe this is another thing. They weren't allowed to install a power wall, but if the power wall is never allowed to export out to the grid, it's just going to be used within the home. I don't really see why that should ever be a problem. Obviously putting 10 kilowatts of solar out onto the grid is a lot, but if they had a power wall and the power wall is pulling from the 10 kilowatts of solar, and then that 10 kilowatts of that stored energy in a power wall, however big that power wall is, could then be used just within the home. So again, not vehicle to home, but power wall to home, instead of going out to the grid. I don't see what the problem is there. So maybe these DNOs need to get a bit smarter about, or maybe the power wall manufacturers, or they need to be a standard where there'll be like a vehicle to home compliance or a vehicle to home setting on the thing, and if you put it into vehicle to home mode, it just never, the software programming will just never let it export out to the grid. So yeah, interesting one. Okay, so next one. Mark says, I would not want my car's traction battery as a virtual power station for the grid. I think the Quasar wallbox can export 7 kilowatts. Yes, it can. But I would not mind if it would just act as a battery power for my own use. Again, another vehicle to home comment. And just prevent import from the grid during the night. I have solar panels which would help prevent import from the grid during the day. Yeah, so spot on. I think this is a key point, and others have made similar points. Yeah, what more can we say? I think we could definitely do something there. And I actually responded, and he responded again. So I basically went back and said I agree. It would be excellent if we could have a power wall just like for your own use, and I think it would be preferential. I think it would be preferential to have a power wall in your car, given that cars don't tend to, people don't tend to own cars for as long as they own like household appliances. If we compare, like how long do you own your boiler for, and how much do you look forward to getting a new boiler versus maybe a new car. Maybe you don't look forward to getting a new car, but you probably get a new car a few more times than you maybe get a new boiler, and maybe again that's not correct for everyone, but if you go out and buy a power wall, and you put it in your home, then you've got to be prepared for that power wall to lose some of its capacity. So you've got to overspec it. So you've got to spec up more kilowatt hours of storage in that power wall, or you've got to be prepared that the power will be less able to cope with your needs over time because the capacity will get less as the system ages. And then at some point you may have to replace it at an expense. So if you're buying a new car every few years anyway, and it comes with that feature, then that's an expense that you then don't have to make, or you can justify the expense of buying a car that does the same thing anyway. So it kills two birds with one stone. So yeah. So this last one is from Chris. Chris says, looking forward to this. Do you know your limit for exporting? Are you aware that this could restrict your generation also? Yes and yes. So yes, it's 8 kilowatts. So that's the limit. Technically, that would potentially restrict my generation as well, because it will turn off generation if theoretically my home can produce just over 11 kilowatts of energy in one go. If we've got the 4 kilowatts coming off of the roof and 4-ish kilowatts coming off the roof and 7 odd kilowatts coming off the car, off the Quasar. In reality though, This house has most of its solar panels on the southeast side of the house, which means that the sun is on those panels first thing in the morning, and it starts to drift off about 2 o'clock in the afternoon in summer. So the peak of the power that's coming off the solars is in the morning and into the early afternoon. Will be early afternoon. There is still some generation in the afternoon up until 4 or 5 o'clock, but it's in the hundreds of watts. It's not in the kilowatts, so it's going to be very, very low. Whereas the peak for consumption, from a vehicle to grid perspective, it's all set around the evening. So, when the car is starting to be told from the grid to put energy back on the grid, all of its 7 kilowatts or however much it's commanded to do, then that will be at the completely opposite end of the day. So I think in reality, just the layout of my house means that the two will never really coincide at their fullest, at their maximum rate. But again, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, there is a potential that my generation will be restricted because the G100 device will start to limit the export, and obviously the export in my case will be export from my solar or export from the vehicle. And the G100 device isn't that clever, I don't think. I think it just cuts it off. We'll have to see what it does, but it's not like it tells the car, oh, can you just notch down to 4 kilowatts please from 7. It doesn't look like it's going to do that. And again, that's where cleverer software could come in, but cleverer software means more time and development and stuff. And if you can just toss a box on the wall that does it for you, even if it is a bit kind of off and on, for the purposes of this trial, I'm sure it's absolutely fine. So that's it. This is the first for me. This is the first time I've kind of done a video on comments, but I really, really like the comments that are coming through on this. And I wanted to share some of the answers with you because I think everyone else might find that interesting as well. And I think the people involved in the trial might find some of these comments interesting because obviously these are going to be future customers potentially of this kind of solution. So that's it. Now I do have the video for the install ready to go, so that'll be coming out soon. I'm just waiting on the Octopus people coming back to me because I did take some footage whilst the installation was going on. I think people will be really, really interested in seeing, a video where the installation is going on. I don't think there's any kind of, in fact, I think it'd be very positive for the trial to generate some more interest. So I have sent it to them. I have sent the video to them to say, hey, do you have any problems with me including this footage in the video? They haven't responded yet, obviously, early days, but hopefully the PR people will see the benefits and see the free publicity. I'm not affiliated with Octopus Energy in any way, shape or form, apart from being a paying customer like you or anyone. And I don't particularly want to be either. I mean, I don't particularly want to take any money off them for doing any of this, because I think this is just an honest, view of how this is how this trial is going. So I don't want to be a stooge of any company that's involved with it. But hopefully they'll agree to it. If not, maybe I'll just replace certain parts of the footage with Lego men or something, so that we can get the video out there and you can see kind of what's been gone on. So anyway, comments in the description below. Would you like to see that video? Would you like to see some of the installation going on? Let me know in the comments below, and we'll see if we can't get that to you next week. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you got some use out of the answers. And if you did make any of the comments that I've commented on in this video, man, that's circular. Then thanks for commenting. Thanks for some of the insight here. For those of you who've worked in the industry and stuff like that, absolutely invaluable. and I think it's just really, really great to see some of those comments coming through. So I'll end it there. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. See you in the next one.